you know what we're like? It's kind of like a coffee shop analogy. We're like that really bougie coffee shop on the corner. You know, it plays a bit of French jazz, does all the frothy lattes and all that kind of stuff. But you're just going in for a black coffee sometimes. You just need to sometimes stop all the fancy stuff and just get rid of the ball to stop the errors happening. And that's where Boro's problem probably is. We can do all these fancy things and we are a hipster team. We can do all the things in the coaching manual that makes you look fantastic to watch and on the eye. We create lots of chances, but Boro's problem is
I'd rather have a latte lath than a black coffee, to be fair.
You're a chairman in need of cash on January transfer deadline day, but your team is in contention for promotion to the Premier League. You get a call to sign your best player for 20 million. I'll say 20 million. What do you do? Hello guys, welcome back to The Sportsman Untitled, and we've got a great episode on the way for you today. We're going to discuss the Tom Cleverley situation at Watford. We're going to discuss Frank Lampard at Coventry. He's in form at the CBS Arena, and we've also got a deep dive on Middlesbrough coming your way because one of our guests today is Johnny from the BoroBreakdown podcast, and Gab Sutton here as always. Gab, let's start with Tom Cleverley and Watford because it's been a bit of a turbulent week, let's say, at Vicarage Road, and an ending with a defeat.
Yeah, certainly has. I really feel for Tom Cleverley. I think he's been treated very badly. I think the fact that this uncertainty has been allowed to hang over him when he's been doing such an incredible job, massively outperforming expectation. You look at the way Matty Pollock spoke after that defeat at Coventry, where he was speaking so passionately in support of the manager, and it takes a lot for a young lad to be able to do that, and all credit to Matty, but I think it shows that even though he's technically paid by the owners of the Pozzos, and it's probably in this time of politically it would have been difficult for Matty Pollock in terms of relations upstairs to make say those kind of things. He still felt so passionately, and I think that shows he's a very genuine guy, but also what an impact Tom Cleverley has made on the dressing room and among the players. So a real shame for me that the club haven't been able to commit to Tom Cleverley and give him that opportunity to build something, because I think he really deserves it. But unfortunately, this is Watford.
It's interesting, isn't it? This is Watford is a great way to put it, because there was great support from the away fans at the CBS Arena despite the defeat. We saw that at the end. You just can't trust Gino Pozzo and the ownership there, can you, Johnny?
No, you definitely can't. How many managers is it in the last 10, 15 years?
More than we can count,
More than
probably.
we can count. So, I mean, that could be a podcast in itself, right? And, look, he hasn't had the investment, Tom Cleverley. He needs a good amount of players to establish themselves in the playoffs, and unfortunately it's going to be the end of the road for him. But I'm really intrigued to see if they do change him, which is looking more likely than ever, how the players react to it as well. And is this going to be another manager that has a 5 or 6 game stint and then they're gone again? And then I already feel the fans have already turned at Watford now, so it's a very interesting dynamic, I think, at the moment. But do I see them in the playoffs? I think if they sack Cleverley, I think that's pretty much game over.
Yeah, it's a tough task. Anyway, it's weird that we're talking about this when they released that statement saying, this is just rumours, but they always come from somewhere with Watford, and I don't think there's any smoke without fire. So we'll see what happens with Tom Cleverley. In the opposite dugout at the CBS Arena, I have to give a bit of praise to my manager, Frank Lampard. 3 wins in 3 at Cov, rocketing up the table. Playoffs still a little way off. Do you think the criticism he received when he was appointed from maybe the wider football public was a bit unfair?
Well, I think it was coloured a little bit by the treatment of Mark Robins being so raw. So in one sense, yes, in another sense, no. Classic politician's answer for you there. But I think that one thing that Frank Lampard has done is get a real... he's up the fitness levels in this Coventry team. They look very aggressive against the ball, which hadn't always been the case earlier in the season. So I think you've got to give him a lot of credit for that. And I also quite like the fact that there's dilemmas now. You've got when Ben Sheaf comes back in, does he replace Jamie Allen, who's in brilliant form? You've got a really good front two at the moment with Ellis Sims and Brandon Thomas Asante, who are both linking up quite nicely. But you got the likes of Hadji Wright and from Mason Clark, who was Player of the Month in the Championship for December, to come back in. So some real dilemmas sort of shaping up for Frank Lampard, and the kind of dilemmas that you'd want as a manager.
And as a Boro fan, you were probably celebrating the exit of Mark Robins more than most. Thoughts on Coventry and Frank Lampard a minute?
Yeah, well, one, glad that Robins has left Coventry. 2, I think Coventry are the team to watch, really, from the group of teams that are slowly starting to put some results together. And if you look at the top 6 right now, 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th, all of us are just trying to throw away our playoff position, and it's only going to take a couple more results to Coventry to really be in that mix. And with Lampard, yeah, there was always some reservations. I think when he came in, he's had a probably difficult time and heavily scrutinised from his previous jobs, and I think that's rightly so, to be honest. But every job is heavily scrutinised in the Premier League. But also with Derby, he did do well, but also with the team that he had at the time, everyone was like, well, he could have done better. But how are Coventry playing right now? I think going to that back five has been instrumental in terms of them changing their form. It suited the team as well under Mark Robins. It was very much like that 3-4-2-1 formation. Really good balance, and I think Lampard's brought that back, to be honest. And although they're working harder and harder, I think the goals are starting to come now. And I think they're only a few results away for Brewley being in that mix come the end of the season.
So I'll give you that money later today. Thank you very much for that. I'm very excited. I'm sorry if you can hear an alarm in the background. There's an alarm in Manchester City Centre that we can't turn off. Nothing we can do about that. Are there alarm bells ringing for Sunderland, Gab? Or should we focus on Plymouth? Because that's quite a good...
I like the link there. I think first of all, a great reaction from Plymouth Argyle after what's been quite an eventful last 48 hours or so. Before that game. So I think you've got to really credit Miron Muslic, because they'd only taken 1 point from his first 3 games in charge. They were all at home, and I think there was probably an apprehension about what the direction the rest of the season was going in. So I think the point and the performance at Sunderland was really important. Callum Wright, who I'm not sure he was necessarily in Wayne Rooney's plans so much, but he seems to be coming into the equation, because I think he looked very bright and inventive at the Stadium of Light. Ryan Hardy starting to carry a threat as well. So definitely some plus points from Plymouth Argyle, and they'll be looking to use that performance as a springboard to try and push to stay up.
It's a small step forward rather than a leap. Maybe the first step on a long distance race or something like that. I think we should also talk about Josh Sargent, because he's back for Norwich, and you talk about teams chasing the playoffs, Johnny. He can make a world of difference to them, can't he?
He definitely can. Border signs as well, 2 of their biggest creative outlets. And, if they start to get into form at the right time, it's similarly what you see in Coventry as well. They will probably push on, and they've got a really good squad, I would say, Norwich. I think they're just, similarly to what you see with Middlesbrough, a very inconsistent team, and it only takes that few results to get that confidence up. But with Josh Sargent, a really underrated player, I would say, at this level. I think his time in the Premier League has probably hindered what I think he actually is. I think he's a really good outlet. Look, I think he's good at getting behind. I would like to see a bit more direct approach, I would say, with Norwich, to be honest, Gab. But I think for the most part, I think he's a great player for them, and for Norwich as well. That's similar to what I was saying there. Just a few results away from being a really strong contender.
I think he got something like 16 goals in 28 games last season, but this is the issue with him. You only really get half a season out of him.
Yeah, I think if he could start regularly and sort of start 40 plus league games, I think you're talking about Josh Sargent when fit as being, for me, the best centre forward in the Championship. And I say that in spite of the fact that he's not necessarily prolific. Maybe there is a dearth of really prolific goal scorers in the Championship at the moment, but I think for me, Josh Sargent, the thing about him is he makes everyone around him better because of his work ethic, because of his link-up play and the way that he sort of spearheads that attack. And when Norwich are without Josh Sargent, I think they're an average mid-table team. When they've got him, they're comfortably a top 6 side, and keeping him fit for the remainder, it could make all the difference.
Absolutely agree with that. Did you also want to make a point on Preston North End as well? Because they're doing pretty well, actually. I will come to Middlesbrough in a bit. Obviously, they beat them this weekend, but they're pretty in form, Preston.
Well, I think it's worth giving a bit of a shout out to Paul Heckingbottom, because I think he's sort of flying under the radar a little bit, the job that he's doing. Just 6 defeats in 27 there for North End since Heckingbottom came in. So he's really stabilised things, and they're taking something away from almost every game, and I think that's a really helpful thing in terms of climbing the table into the sort of mid-table bracket. I think defensively they've been outstanding, and Thordarson really impressed me. I'd love to know what Johnny thinks, but he was the one who really impressed me at the weekend, even if it's frustrating from a Boro perspective.
No, look, I think with what the job Paul Heckingbottom's doing, it feels like a 3-year plan with a lot of managers, where you tend to see in that first 12 to 18 months, it's all about base building and making yourself really strong, like difficult to beat. And I can see that with Preston. The only thing or reservations I have with Preston is one, investment, and two, the goals going forward. Although, we gave them 2 goals at the weekend, I just don't really see too much creative outlet from them, which I think is probably the reason why they're stuck where they are, and investment's been really low for like the last decade. They're just kind of resigned to this position, but he's doing a fantastic job with what he's got, but there could be so much more, and I think that's what would probably keep the Preston fans awake at night, to be honest. What if could we actually do it? But he's building that good base.
He certainly is. And also, I want to talk about Heckingbottom from an in-season appointment perspective, because when his first job was at Barnsley, where he took over from Lee Johnson, and they went on this massive run towards the double. They won the League One playoffs and the JPT that season, 15-16. At Sheffield United, he took over from Slavisa Kanovic, in the midway through the 21-22 campaign. They end up finishing the playoffs after a poor start. And then at Preston North End, he's come in and stabilised. So as an in-season appointment, he seems to be pretty good.
You almost forget he is an in-season appointment because it was only after 1 game or so, wasn't it, in the summer? But you are right, he didn't have the pre-season. He's kind of picked up and taken it quite well. Tony Mowbray, what a return to the Hawthorns and West Brom this weekend. Johnny, I'll let you talk about Mowbray for a bit, because we're interested to see how he fills the boots of Carlos Corberán, but it would be a great story if he got them up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, what a phenomenal appointment, by the way. What a great appointment to bring Tony Mowbray back. Probably the best manager, I think, of the lot that they've been able to get him in. And I love Mogger. I absolutely love him. His connection with Middlesbrough, he got a fantastic reception midweek. Yes, we did beat them, but he couldn't have done anything really. He was appointed on the Friday, and the game was on the Tuesday, so he wasn't going to have much time on the training ground. But those few days, he's slowly starting to put his foot on this team and really make a stamp in where they're going to be. I definitely think they're a playoff team, West Brom.
He's such a likeable guy, isn't he, as well, Johnny? Like, the kind of person
amazing.
you'd love to go for a drink with, and just really down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, he would definitely share his chocolates with him as well. He loves his revels and all. Like, people give him chocolate bars in the streets of Middlesbrough as well. But, he's been to pretty much every Boro game, I think, since his diagnosis for the most part. So I was really worried. I was like, oh, God, he knows us more than anyone when we were playing them. But I think his management skills, the squad that West Brom have, the base that they've been built under Corberán as well, I think they're definitely a shoe. And it's just similarly with like these teams, like from that 5th to like 8th, it's just the consistency factor, isn't it, Gavin? Yeah. But for me, fantastic appointment, really good result of the weekend, 5-1. And I think this is only just the start for Mowbray, and he could definitely get them up in the next year or two.
Go on, Gab.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that really stood out, completely echo those sentiments on Mowbray, but what really stood out for me was John Swift, because what I really like about the way that he plays is that when Portsmouth pressed with a sort of a front two, and it looked like it might be difficult for Holgate and Hegem to kind of play around that, Swift basically dropped in between them two and gave them more angles, and it helped them sort of play through the press, as it were. But then as play progressed, or if they, Portsmouth were only pressing with the one, John Swift was able to sort of create further up the pitch. So he brings a real, dare I say, universality to this West Brom side, and I think that he's going to be crucial to their sort of creative endeavours this season. But also the big one was probably Dean Garner, because I thought he was outstanding with his ball carrying and his impact in the final third.
Yeah, he kind of played as a fake front two, if you want, with Jed Wallace, didn't he? And they've got a lot of exciting
By the way,
wingers.
Wallace, for a 30, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's still a strong runner, He's a real athlete.
Yeah, unbelievable. From what we saw at Millwall, he's kind of carried that over. But I think West Brom got a lot of exciting attacking players, and if Mowbray can get the best out of them, they could be a completely different beast to what we saw under Corberán, where they were kind of grinding out results. Right, it's time to move on to Middlesbrough. You can take the spotlight, Johnny. I'm going to start with Morgan Whittaker. Big signing for Middlesbrough. Obviously sold Isaiah Jones for about $5 million. It looks like that fee and a little bit more has been spent on Whittaker. Could he be a bargain, or is it a waste of money? Where are you right now?
He's only a bargain if he succeeds. I think it was last year he was tipped, it was like 12, 15 million. I think he was tipped
possibly
to go
more.
away
For
Lazio or a club like that.
Lazio, yeah. And look, a lot is going to be mentioned around Morgan Whittaker and how he left Plymouth. And there's going to be an attitude problem. Is it X, Y, and Z? And I think it's very interesting for him to come into Middlesbrough now, because he's going to be surrounded by players who, no disrespect to Plymouth, there are going to be better players around him. They're a team that are pushing for promotion. It's a step up for him. He's not going to be the best player in the changing room. And I'm really interested to see how he finds that dynamic. And he has to really work hard to get into the squad. And although he might be that replacement for Doak in the long term, I could potentially see him on that left-hand side with Ryan Giles getting him behind, because that is where I think Whittaker is probably best. I think where someone is getting around him, knocking the ball in the box and just floating between that half space. I think he's a really good addition for us. I think he's going to really fit into our system. The signing and the fee, we will see. Time will tell, but it could be the bargain of the century, right? As long as it comes good. But I'll ask me that question in 2 years' time.
What did you make of his exit and kind of the fallout from the way he left Plymouth? Obviously left out of the squad or didn't turn up according to the Plymouth manager for the game. He's then released a statement kind of saying that he was available or whatever, and he's kind of stuck up for himself. It's not the prettiest way to leave a club that he's done quite a lot for.
I think that until the day that you sign for another club, you give your everything to the club that you're paid to represent. And the issue I have with Morgan Whittaker is I don't feel as if he's done that. I think there's a way to leave a football club, and I think that he's disrespected the Green Army, who, without the Plymouth Argyle fans who travel the length and breadth of the country to support their club, he doesn't get his wages. So it's one thing for Morgan Whittaker to say, I'm really ambitious and I want to, reach such and such a level in my career. That's absolutely fine. But on the way, you've got to treat people properly. I don't think he's done that. I think he's let Plymouth Argyle down with his conduct. I think there's sort of these excuses. There's journalists that I've come across who have tried to basically put forward Morgan Whittaker's version of events on social media, almost sort of on his behalf to kind of limit the reputational damage. But I'm not buying it. I think that he should have turned up for that game. He was selected. He should have played, and he should have honoured his contract by giving everything to Plymouth Argyle before he signed for another club.
Are you slightly concerned about that?
You can be. You definitely can be. There's always a concern when you hear the stories and they're going to come into your football club. But also he has a point to prove now. That's where I can flip it on its head and say, well, actually, if you do have bad attitude, you're not going to stay very long at Middlesbrough and you're going to go back down the table again. And he does have quality, Morgan Whittaker, and the more you watch him, you think, okay, he's okay on his 1v1s. He can get a ball in the box. He needs players around him to really make him shine, I would say. But I'm not too concerned. And yes, there is that, overarching picture of what he might be, because it hasn't just been Plymouth, it's been the other two teams that he's been at as well, which he has had pretty disruptive exits. So back of your mind, you're going, well, when he does leave, or if he does leave Middlesbrough, yes, that's a concern. But for right now, he has a lot to prove in the next few months just to try and establish himself in the team.
Are you also slightly concerned, and I speak of someone who saw this with personal experience earlier in the season when we had Hadji Wright playing on the left-hand side and then we spent quite a few million on Mason Clark, and instead of letting Mason Clark play in his best position, we swapped him to the other wing and it didn't work at all. Morgan Whittaker's done all of his best work from the right, cutting in, really dangerous, shooting at goal. You've already mentioned him doing a job on the left. That's kind of sets alarm bells ringing in my head there again.
Yeah, it's an interesting position, that left-hand side for Middlesbrough, because you will see that player floating. It'll be like a 2-10s, and they try and break the lines from there. The reason why I'm quite quietly confident he could play on that left-hand side is just due to Giles signing. Really, Whittaker really does thrive with a full-back in and behind and around him, which, could maybe see Middlesbrough going for a right-back. They were linked with Barry Mumba at Plymouth. We may as well call ourselves Middlesbrough Argyle at this point.
I think that would be too attacking. I think what you need your right centre-half to do is kind of tuck into an in-possession back three. So you've got those, so you've got some really solid foundations there, and then maybe a Morris and a Hackney protecting it, because I think if you go with two attacking fullbacks, I think there's a danger that you're going to leave yourselves wide open.
Yeah. The three in possession is very much what we were like under the 2022-23 season, when he came in and Giles was that player who would just create the width and you'd see McGree float inside, and that's where I see Whittaker could play that role. But if he was to play on the right, he has to dislodge Ben Doak, and I don't think anyone's dislodging Ben Doak at this point. So when we come back to the attitude side of things, well, good luck, dislodging him, and then to try and work your way into the team, because Delano Berg's always playing fantastic on that left-hand side as well. So really interesting dynamic of what he can play. But Marcus Force is fit as well, and Force came up front against Preston. Appreciate when Lath went off. So, there's options, and we've got layers of creativity in the group, and I think he just adds another layer to that. And when you look at Middlesbrough, we are that football hipster team. We create a lot of chances. We're fun to watch. We can break the lines, do all this fun stuff. We just need to add more layers to it, because there is teams that will sit in that lower block. And can Whittaker help us between the lines? Probably yes, but I'm looking at probably Ryan Giles as that player to create that width to get us in the box. So there's a lot more to it than just the meaty eye.
I also think for Middlesbrough you need to raise your floor a little bit, because I think when you're at your best, you're certainly on a par with Leeds as the most creative side in possession in the Championship. But the problem is that when you're not at your best, you seem to struggle to kind of just tick over their points like West Brom do so well. And for me, I think there's maybe a fragility or a sort of something slightly passive about Middlesbrough. I've felt for a couple of years now out of possession, and I'm just wondering about how Michael Carrick looks to find. You look at Ipswich, for instance, they're very good at when they're in the Championship, very good at managing the defensive transitions and being good against the ball while still being creative. I think Middlesbrough need to refine that balance a little bit.
You know what we're like? It's kind of like a coffee shop analogy. We're like that really bougie coffee shop on the corner. It plays a bit of French jazz, does all the frothy lattes and all that kind of stuff. But you're just going in for a black coffee sometimes. You just need to sometimes stop all the fancy stuff and just get rid of the ball to stop the errors happening. And that's where Boro's problem probably is. We can do all these fancy things, and we are a hipster team. We can do all the things in the coaching manual that makes you look fantastic to watch and on the eye. We create lots of chances, but Boro's problem is
I'd rather have a latte lath than a black coffee, to be fair.
There we go.
Let's just rip it off.
Do you think that's a Carrick problem to address? And I know we saw it with Company at Burnley, where his style of play was almost the most important thing for them. He is receiving a lot of plaudits. I think he's got the ability to manage in the Premier League. I don't know what Boro fans are feeling about him at the moment. But if he can't grind out results and, I don't want to say find a backbone, but it's almost that in some away games, he may not make it as a top manager.
Yeah, it's a blend of individuals and Carrick as well from a system. There's knowing when to plough and knowing when to mix it up, but also the amount of individual errors that we've had this season. I think we're top of the league for individual errors leading to a goal. So you could actually create a 5-minute compilation video of Boro's errors this season and just laugh at them and put your head in your hands and just go, good God. I mean, look at the weekend, banged heads, and then they went and scored. So with Carrick, yes, I think you can definitely manage a lot higher. The style, the way that we're playing, 100% we can do it. It's just ironing the nose out, and it's like saying that coffee analogy. Sometimes you just got to have a bit of Tony Pulis to you, where just get rid of it and just stop trying to play moments where you shouldn't really play. And that's the difference, I would say, where Boro should be. They should be a lot more comfortable than what we are.
It's interesting because I was watching that second goal that Preston scored, and I understand what Michael Carrick would say if we put this to him. I think he would say you've got to run the risks of conceding those kind of goals in order to cultivate this style. But I'm not sure. I struggle to believe that there isn't some sort of middle ground where you can say, okay, 95% of the time we want to play out from the back and we want to create our passing angles, but sometimes when there's that chaos where one of the defenders might have been Fry, sort of had a bit of cramp and things looked a bit awkward and you're under pressure, just clear it. I think sometimes in those extra occasions you've just got to say, what, needs must.
Yeah, it's like common sense goes out the window sometimes. Do you know what I mean? And that's where Boro are at. Do you know, it's just they will do some amazing things, but also do the most stupid things you'll ever see. And that is the reason why we're sixth and we're not really comfortably in the playoffs. It's just those individual errors which is causing our concern, to be honest.
It's okay to sometimes put the ball in the channel and let your number 9 chase it. And we have to come on to the number 9 because it's Emanuel Latte Lath, who is getting a lot of interest. Obviously, it's kind of the looming factor for Middlesbrough during this transfer window. Do you think he'll stay? Do you think he'll go? What impact will it have if he does leave?
Do I think he's going to go? I don't think he fancies that move to the MLS. I really don't think he fancies it. We have agreed fees and the deal's just completely stalled. So there's definitely a player aspect to that. I think that he shouldn't be in that league. He should be playing a lot higher than what he is. And Latte Lath's really fun. He's such a great striker to watch. On the eye side of things, his press is really good. He gets himself in good positions. Wasteful at times, I would say that, if you compare him to Conway in the box, I think if one-on-one, Tommy Conway is probably the player that you're going to pick over Emanuel Latte Lath. It's a big loss for us if we do lose him, though. We've got a few days to replace him, and I trust Middlesbrough's recruitment team. We are getting really good players in and then selling them for a profit. That is our model now, and I think it's going to be a really difficult moment for us in these last few days if we do let him go. But I could see him staying. I really can. And that might scupper some of our plans towards the end of the window because, it was reported fee of $22 million. So it's a lot of money, right? And, we only brought him in for $3 million initially, then going up to $5 million. So there's a lot to weigh on it, really. But he would be a big miss because Conway offers you a little bit different. He's much better in the box, but Lath is a really good press and gets himself into good position. So I'm very intrigued to see how it plays out over the next few days.
You could also try Whittaker as a striker if Latte Lath does leave. It is another option. Ben Doak, we've got to talk about him. Gab, probably Middlesbrough's player of the season. We'll come to Johnny in a minute. He's got bags of potential, bags of quality. He looks like one of those players who's got a championship loan who we won't ever see again at this level.
Yeah, I think, maybe when he's 37 or something. Yeah, I think with Ben Doak, he's just got this stunning vision. There was one of the chances that I think he sat at Bergsorg, didn't he, at Preston North End, and just showed this brilliant vision to play that pass in behind early. So he's got the ball carrying ability, but he's also got the vision to pick out other players. So he's been a joy to watch this season, Ben Doak.
Yeah, with Ben Doak as well, I really enjoy him, and you can't believe it's his first loan properly, and they're getting a really strong run of games, and there is that rawness about him. He's only 18, 19, and there's a lot to come from him. Where's his ceiling? We're not really too sure, to be honest, because there's a lot that he can do and a lot of really good things that he does, but where do I see him fitting in this Liverpool team? He kind of reminds me a little bit of Harvey Elliott, because he's got all the potential in the world, but there's no way that he's dislodging a Salah he's not going to obviously Salah's going to go, but in terms of quality he's not going to be at that level, and it's a big gamble for Liverpool to really invest him over the next few years, because there was tips going, he could go for 30 million here and there. I don't think he's worth 30 million pound at this moment in time, to be honest. He needs to develop, he needs time. Right now, where's his ceiling? I still think mid Premier League, top 8 probably, but not at the level of what a Salah would be. I just don't think he wouldn't be anywhere near it. But he is very, very exciting. I love Ben Doak. I think he's brilliant. I would love to keep him, but it's just, you fell in love with a loan player again, haven't you? So you're just never going to get it back. But like you're saying, we're planning ahead. Whittaker's come in now. That could naturally be the replacement. But yeah, who knows for Ben Doak? It's probably a Premier League loan next, I would say, is next logical step.
Unless he's back up to Salah for Liverpool, perhaps.
Well, Harvey Elliott's technically that backup for now, isn't he? You're going to dislodge Harvey Elliott? I think who's got more experience in that? I don't think so. I just feel like he'll need another loan in the Premier League. And you know what? There's so much time for these young players. We're always so quick to fast track them and play them all the time. We're like, oh my God, this player's so exciting. And then the next thing you know, it's like you just discarded him after a moment. So he just needs time. I think and we need to relax a little bit on him. But what a talent, what really fun player to have at your football club. And fingers crossed, we could see him next year in a Middlesbrough shirt in the Premier League, but who knows? I can't see it happening.
Don't get too carried away. Gab, let's talk about the midfield at Boro, because they've got Finn Azaz, who's been wonderful since joining. Aidan Morris and Aidan Hackney are two players I really like as well. I feel like that's a midfield trio who can compete with almost anyone at this level. Yeah,
Finn Azaz has been another one, and his link-up play with Ben Doak has been phenomenal. And it's part of the reason why I'd be really excited about Ryan Giles coming in, because it allows whoever plays on the left, whether that's Force, whether that's Whittaker, or whether that's Bergsorg, to kind of basically just cut inside without Boro losing that width on the left. So I reckon Carrick might set up with a kind of 3-2-4-1 shape, where you've got your kind of in possession back three, and then you've got Giles sort of flying forward, providing the width, and then your sort of left-sided forward cutting inside and linking up with Azaz. I think that could be quite nice.
I'm so glad you said the 3-4-2-1, really, or 3-2-4-1, because I've been campaigning for that for weeks on my podcast. So I mean, I think it's a good move for us to have. I think even if you look at Whittaker now coming in, and you were to play that 4-2-3-1 just as like a resting ship, it doesn't really work or fit, because you've got so many players there who can play that system. Yeah. And I think that 2 10s would suit them both.
And also, the other thing, Johnny, is I think Neto Borges or is it Bangura, the other left back you've got? Yeah. Neither of them are like super attacking going forward, whereas I think Giles does bring that sort of attacking guile.
I think with Bangura, he's just had too many injuries. We've not seen enough of him, but he would be a very attacking outlet if he was fit again. He's just had 2 really bad injuries back to back, and when you return, you're not going to be the same player, are you? So, yeah, that definitely helps from a wing-back perspective. Giles definitely helps from there. You'll see Boro maybe move to that shape, what we've seen as in 22-23 season. And it becomes a more fun team having them in them as well. Finners has, by the way, just to touch on him again, him and Whittaker were fantastic for Plymouth. So it's like that reunited. I think it's a really nice thing to look at. And when you're looking at Hayden and Aidan in midfield, they bring the best out of each other. Hayden Hackney was not the player he was a few weeks ago without Aidan Morris, and we've missed him so much. And the problem with Middlesbrough this season is that inconsistency and depth, where when we don't have the depth and the players that we have, and there's some players where you think there could be probably mid-table to lower-table championship team, and that's the reason why I think we've got some inconsistencies in our results. But Aidan Morris, talking about signs of the season, he's got to be well up there in the championship. Wow. Like, he is just came with this division and been fantastic, and he really does bring out the best in Hayden Hackney. And just probably one final point on tens, Hayden Hackney could definitely play in a more attacking position. The way that he carries the ball, gets himself in good positions, he could be a player that we could see on that left-hand side.
It's funny because I think Dan Neil has a similar thing at Sunderland, where he's probably got the ability to play forward and make those sort of driving runs, but in the system and because of the attacking players, it's harder to give them that freedom, isn't it, sometimes?
Oh, it definitely is. And look, when Hackney played a little bit higher on the left last season, he was actually some of his best games, and it's interesting to see him in the position that he's in now. But I think Morris gives him that ability to really push on, because he is that anchor in that system. We do need another midfielder though, because if he gets injured again, Morris, that Barlasser...
he's a completely different type of player, isn't he? Barlasser's not as aggressive against the ball, or so he can't really do that job.
Yeah, it's like having ice cream on your pizza. You like them both, but they shouldn't go together. Do you know what I mean?
You're on fire with the analogies today.
Love an analogy. You can tell I had my coffee this morning. But that's what I feel like.
Black coffee or from the bougie shop.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They don't really go together.
Yeah.
And with Howson coming to the end of his career now, you are desperate for that player. And Lon McCabe, who's coming through, Bailey Palmer as well, who's 16. Two exciting talents, but they're not ready yet. Not ready at all. So you do need someone to fill that gap.
How's Lon McCabe getting on, by the way?
He hasn't had many games. He played against Blackburn. I would love for him to go out on loan, but he's been that fifth choice. But Bailey Palmer is probably the one to watch. He looks very, very
Even at 16, has he played in the Cups? Or?
Yeah, he played in the under-23s against Athletic Bilbao, because Middlesbrough in those European games.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you can watch the compilation on the way home, you can message me afterwards. But yeah, really exciting talent. But again, I was just saying about Ben Doak, but a bit patience on all of them. But we definitely need another midfielder.
We have to talk about the XG as well. Obviously, in the table, Middlesbrough second, only behind Leeds in the XG table in the Championship. Yet we're talking about Latte Lath as potentially a £20 million striker, and also Conway's a good finisher as well. So you must be banging your head against a wall at this point.
Yeah, it's more so the other end, I would say. It's going forward. I remember at the start of the season, I think we were like -10 in our XG going forward, and I was like, good grief. We are very chaotic in creating chances, which I think sometimes is a detriment to what we do. And we are wasteful. Like, last underlying numbers, sometimes they aren't always too great because of the chances that he gets, which is the reason why I sometimes prefer Conway in those really key moments. But we create a lot. We put chances away. We're a lot better going forward. We're above our expected goals going forward, but it's the goalkeeping position for me. If you were to say, Johnny, sign one...
That's actually, sorry, just on that, that's caught me out a bit, that you're above, in terms of attacking XG, you're above the expected goals.
Above the expected goals now, but it's the defensive side of things where we're like -7. So it really just brings us down, and underlying numbers suggest that expected points should be 5th, which is kind of where we should be and where we are now. But going forward, defensively, you're thinking it's calamitous sometimes.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether, again, come back to defensive transitions. You've got somebody like Luke Ayling, who I've rated at this level for a long, long time. Like, you don't play staff from Marcelo Bielsa's side if you're not a good, intelligent footballer, which I think he is. But in terms of that system, requires your right back, I think, to have pace and strength and be really good at covering your ground in 1v1 duels. And I'm not sure Luke Ayling at this stage of his career, how well can he necessarily do that?
Yeah, it comes back to that point of players who aren't at that level of really pushing for promotion. Luke Ayling, is slowly starting to come to the back end of his career. Anthony Dijksteel, he's not, as much as I enjoy Anthony Dijksteel, I don't think he's that level.
He peaked a year or two ago, didn't he?
Yeah,
Anthony Dyke still.
And Tommy Smith has been out for over 18 months now. So you are looking at the right back position and going, questionable. You're looking at the goalkeeper.
I mean, was it worthwhile spending £6 million on Morgan Whittaker when the right back's maybe more of a pressing issue?
I think Morgan Whittaker was a deal where if you're after him, you've got to get him now, rather than a bit late, rather in the summer, because I think he would have probably went in this window regardless. I mean, going to Burnley, you don't really want to lose him if he's a long-term target. That right back position, you're looking at players who could maybe fit that role. I quite like Costello at Blackburn, who could give us a bit more of a defensive base, I would say. But when it comes back to the point I was making earlier around Whittaker, you probably need someone more attacking. But then is Giles going to be a permanent in the summer? Not at the moment, but it might be. So it's an interesting position to look at. I can't believe that wing backs are one of the most talked about positions now in football, which is interesting. But we have to identify that spot. Yes, it might not have been wise to spend 5 to 6 million on Morgan Whittaker, but I think we had to do it. And also, I think Middlesbrough had one eye on that Lath sale as well. You know, you're getting £22 million in. We're at pretty much a negative spend. If he does go out, you can probably invest more on that right back.
Right, yeah.
But Dyke seals out the contract.
But then, also, Johnny, you kind of want the Latte Lath thing to be resolved one way or another soon, so that you know what the state of play is, as opposed to kind of going into deadline day with this sort of, is he going to go? Can we bring in a right back? You know, it's not ideal, is it, to have that sort of thing hanging over you?
Oh, it's not ideal at all. Really not ideal, because I think Middlesbrough want to probably bring in about 3 or 4 players. And you know, I mean, it's not a bad thing if you keep Emanuel Latte Lath, but you still have that glaring issue. Can that be addressed in the summer? Yeah. Is it a huge priority that we change it right now? Probably not. I think it's definitely a summer job. But if you're looking at one position to really prioritise, it's the goalkeeper.
Absolutely. I want to reflect back on the 22-23 season as well, because I see that as quite a big missed opportunity for Middlesbrough. Obviously, you had Chuba Akpom up front scoring goals. Is that the feeling amongst the fan base? I know you're kind of in and around the playoffs now.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it's a massive opportunity that we missed. If we did get into that playoff final, we wouldn't have had Akpom for that playoff game. He was injured. So it was an interesting one where you think, oh God, we've just lost a 28, 29 goal season striker for the biggest game of the season. It is a missed opportunity, because if you look at the team that we had at the time, Cameron Archer, Chuba Akpom, Aaron Ramsey, Ryan Giles, you lost about 50 goals overnight because they all left in that window, and it was a real sliding doors moment for us. I would have loved to go up that year. It was a really good opportunity, but you know, Simon, Coventry came to town, and we can't beat Mark Robbins, and that was it. And football's brutal in that side of things. But if you look at that season, Boro's points per game towards that back end of that season, we really stuttered over the line. Yeah. And the best teams, the teams that go up in the playoffs are the ones that are most in form over like the last 10, 15 games. It's no real lottery. If you're really in form, you are going to probably go up, to be honest, and Boro just missed that opportunity. It was really fun.
At the same time though, Johnny, I don't look at it and think you've dropped off massively since then, because the following season I think it was more about didn't really have the same 11 for any length of time, and even then narrowly missed out on the top 6, and I think this season you're still one of the most creative sides in the league. So I don't look at it as a case of you've dropped off since then. It's just that you've not quite been able to.
There's one moment in Carrick's reign where we've dropped off massively, and there was the start of last season. Everything when you look at Carrick's reign, it's always been 1.6 to 1.8 points per game. That gets you in the playoffs convincingly. It's not the 2 points a game where you need to get automatics, but we're pretty much a playoff team. If you look at Middlesbrough, from the finance, the revenue, the players coming in, getting sold, all the wages, everything moulded together from like the on pitch and the off pitch. Middlesbrough are 5th or 6th team or club, and that's kind of just where we're at. But that's good enough. That is more than good enough for a team that's only hit in the playoffs 3 times since 2009 when we were under Gareth Southgate. So, you know, it's pretty much where we should be in that. I'm kind of happy with that. But yeah, back to your initial question, it was a missed opportunity because of the squad that we had, and it was really fun and really enjoying. But it broke my heart. So
I broke my heart as well. If that helps you, it just happened. I had to spend a couple £100 going down to Wembley to feel it. What do Middlesbrough need to get to the Premier League? Then this is my final question for you.
The goalkeeper, definitely. It's Senny Dieng's just not at the level we need him to be. Sol Bryn's too young, and Tom Glover's the 3rd choice goalkeeper. And if you look at Middlesbrough's numbers and save prevention, save percentage, we're pretty much in the bottom 3 for the most part for all of that. It's a massive difference having a really good goalkeeper. On top of that, we need a bit more depth. It comes back to the points I was making earlier around our inconsistent results, key players being out and players coming in who aren't at that top level for playoff like run-ins. We just need a bit more quality, and we're desperate for a goalkeeper. And that probably compiled into one will get us into a position where we'll go up this season. But in the playoffs, if we go in there with good form, I don't really fear anyone because we give a really good account of ourselves. We beat Sheffield United. We were really good against Leeds until we combusted. We gave a goal away for Sunderland. So if we can cut out those errors and have a bit more quality and a good goalkeeper,
it's a big if though, Johnny.
It's maybe, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's what I would really like to see. If I'm going to go all in on Michael Carrick as a manager in English football, I would like to see him evolve a little bit and come up with a bit of a stronger out of possession strategy. I love his in possession stuff. I don't think he's one of the best at that, but I just think I'd like to see him maybe set some slightly higher defensive standards, and that's probably the one area that I'd maybe question him on so far.
Yeah, I think it comes down to players individually rather than just sole system. I can understand where you would see Middlesbrough being quite a poor side, but if you're looking in set without the ball and we're a counter-attacking team, we actually do really well. We're able to create that dynamic where we don't get cut open too much. But if you look at Middlesbrough's goals we conceded this season, it came from us on the ball rather than being off it, which I think is quite interesting. Really, it should be in the manual of coaching. You don't really concede many goals when you're in possession, but the way that we play, it can be quite expansive. It's very prone to defensive issues. I think it's more so accumulation of quality with playing and maybe system that you were coming to that caused Middlesbrough's problems. But for the most part, I think Carrick's a great manager. I think he will probably manage in the Premier League at some point. Whether it's with Middlesbrough, I'm not too sure.
Should we finish by doing our predictions on where we think Boro will finish this season? Because I could start this one. I think you are the best team outside the top 4. I think the top 4 have gone. So I think you're going to finish 5th and give it a good go in the playoffs at least. I'm not sure if you'll have the nous to get the better of a Burnley or a Sunderland or a Leeds. They probably won't be in the playoffs. So I think I've been big on Boro all season on this because it creates so many chances, so much quality. Signing of Whittaker, I think, is a good one. I'm going 5th. Gab, what about you?
I think West Brom finish 5th because of their high floor. I think Middlesbrough might just pip Norwich to top 6 berth.
I agree with you, Gab. I think 6th. I predicted 6th at the start of the season. I'm going to stick with it. I think it's just the way that Middlesbrough are and how we play them, how we work. We're just a 5th or 6th team written all over it. So I'm going to go with 6th, and I'm comfortable with that. And maybe Sunderland 3rd, or we might beat them. Who knows? But
trip to Wembley, maybe.
I can't. We've never won at Wembley, so that's maybe not.
Getting excited for the playoffs, and you can't win at Wembley. We're going to look forward to a couple of big games this weekend. Now, I'm going to start with Sheffield Wednesday versus Luton Town. Saturday, 3:00. This one. Wednesday doing pretty well on the up. Luton still struggling to get going under Bloomfield. Gab.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Matt Bloomfield said after the 1-0 defeat to Millwall that maybe, it was one of those where 3 games in 8 days was difficult in terms of fatigue. But then I, saw YouTuber Lewis Williams, who I'd recommend anyone go subscribe to, saying maybe there was a question mark perhaps over application and, desire and things like that. So maybe there's some sort of combination of the two. Certainly Matt Bloomfield has got to find some solutions, but my worry a little bit for Matt Bloomfield is when he was at Wycombe Wanderers, a lot of his great work was off the back of the culture that Gareth Ainsworth set, and him himself as a player. Whereas I think at Luton, is there that same sort of culture in place that he can build on? That would be my sort of question mark, and it's a concern for them going into the sort of remaining stages of the season, because as much as you would kind of, it's an 11 that sort of leaps off the page on paper, there is a lot of players seem to be underperforming, and there's only sort of another 6 or 7 days the window to go. So can they find the solutions? So I'm starting to get a bit concerned about Boro.
It's a really tough fixture for them as well. Sheffield Wednesday way. Go on, Johnny.
Yeah, I was going to say, Gab, do you think that Luton could go down, because they are a team that considers, this team's too good to go
Yeah.
down. But realistically, they could go. Do you think they are?
I think they've got to be in the conversation now, because I think, like you, for much of the season I've been saying, no, the squad's too good on paper. They've got Morris, they've got Doughty, Nakamba. Players are too good to be in that bottom six. But just because that's what the league table says, I think at this stage of the season you've got to take it seriously.
We've seen too much of the season now to not consider them as relegation candidates. It's not 10 games in, 15 games in. It's not a slow start anymore. We're now into the second half of the season. I think this Wednesday game, Danny Roll always gets loads of praise from us, and I think it's a really, really tough one. Should we do a score prediction for this one, Gab?
I'll go for 2-0 to Sheffield Wednesday.
I'm the same. I really think Sheffield Wednesday will do a number on them, and convincingly as well. And that could be one of those results where you think, oh God, this is, you're staring down the barrel. And
Can I ask you, Johnny, Danny Rowe, from a neutral perspective, if Michael Carrick was to be poached by a Premier League club sometime in the future, would Danny Rowe be a manager that you'd look at and say, I'd like a bit of that?
yeah, Danny Roll has a fantastic ceiling, doesn't he? It's really high. There's one game, when I've been able to watch it live, was the Middlesbrough 3-3 against Sheffield Wednesday with 3-0 at half time. Danny Roll switched it to a 4-1-4-1, nullified Boro completely. We got a man sent off, and just went silly, and we drew 3-3. But every time I've watched Sheffield Wednesday, I've been really impressed with how he sets them up. I think they're well above their weight at the moment with the squad that they have.
Agreed, yeah.
I think he's really keeping them up there, and there'll be a team to watch as soon as he leaves. They could fall like a stone, unfortunately, but I would love him at Middlesbrough, if Carrick left.
Certainly one of the teams in the playoff mix, I think. The other game we're going to look forward to is actually a Monday night game, and it's Boro versus Sunderland. Is this a bit of a derby?
Derby, not a derby. It's only a derby if you win. So, so that's the Sunderland narrative. It's a rivalry more than a derby. But,
Do you know what one memory I have of this game is when you both went down in the 16-17 Premier League season. I remember the two sets of fans singing "Down with the Mackhams" and "Down with the Boro" to each other. I thought
we
that
were
was quite
both
fun.
so bad that season.
Yeah.
I remember at the flip game at the start of the season where Stuani scored an absolute screamer, and I'm thinking, hey, you know what? We're going places under Karanka in this division. And we just completely fell apart. And we were really bad. But not really a derby though. Derby rivalry, whatever.
It's a bit of a friendly rivalry.
Gab is, of course, I don't know if you know this, our Sunderland big fan, big cheerleader on this podcast. So it's a tough game for Sunderland. Of course, it's an away game, and they've been not out of form, but they've dropped points lately.
Yeah, I think that the draw with Plymouth Argyle will be a big disappointment. One thing I would like to see Rhys Labrice address is, I think sometimes game management, putting on another defender for a midfielder or a forward, I've seen him do that a couple of times, and I'm not sure it's necessarily been the great thing. I think they could have an extra few points. If I look at Hull just as another example, I know they're a lot lower in the table, but when they won at Sheffield United 3-0, they were still really aggressive against the ball, even in the second half when they had that lead. And that's what I really like about Ruben Sellers. Really impressed by Rhys Labrice. I think he's done an outstanding job at Sunderland. But if there's one sort of blemish on the copybook for me, I would say I think that game management, maybe just be a little bit braver when you've got the lead and not maybe bring on another defender.
Riverside home form, what's that been like this season?
Not great, really not great. It's a cause for concern for Boro fans. I think away from home, it feels like we have a lot less pressure on us to perform. But once there's been a few bad misplaced passes, teams are going in that lower block, it's hard to break down. We're starting to horseshoe. It's become a bit of a difficult atmosphere. So if Sunderland score that first goal, really sit in that lower block, make it difficult and allow Boris to have a load of possession, it could be a really difficult game for us, to be honest. So home form not great. Sunderland coming to town, they've got a point to prove, and I think it's really interesting. But I think it's going to be a draw, though. I do think it'll be a 1-1.
A 1-1, that's good from you. Gab, score prediction, please.
I'll go for 1-0 Sunderland.
There you go.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I'll say 2-1 Middlesbrough just to cheer you up as well. Gab, onto your corner of concern as we enter our final part of the show.
Yeah, a little bit worried about Swansea. After that 5-1 loss at Norwich, not the first team to concede a lot of goals at Carrow Road because their home goal-scoring record is a real strength there. So I'm sure they'll do that to lots of other teams this season, especially with Sargent. But bit of a concern for me about Swansea in terms of I love Luke Williams as an in-possession coach, and I think his teams can play some great stuff at times. I've rated him in that regard for a long time, but I think out of possession, I'm not sure about Swansea, and I think that they can be carved open quite easily sometimes. So I'm a little bit worried that they're on 34 points at the moment, which is a fair tally. At the same time, the way the Championship relegation battle's going, I think it's going to be a high points total. So so Swansea might need to get another 20 points or so, 18 to 20 points. I think they're going to have to be a bit better without the ball.
I kind of picked them out last week as a team up the table that I thought could get sucked into it. They're just conceding a lot of goals. I think they conceded 4 at Portsmouth, 3 at Cardiff as well, 3 against Southampton, obviously FA Cup Premier League, and then got hit for 5 at Norwich. How does he fix it? Do you have any idea?
I always feel like good in-possession coaches, if you want to get to the Premier League and have a really good career at that sort of level, you've got to have some sort of balance between in-possession work and out-of-possession work, because you've got to have a strategy whereby if we lose the ball, we've got these players here and we basically know how to respond to losing the ball. So yeah, I really like Luke Williams' work in terms of creating chances. I've been impressed with the likes of Josh Key this season and Franco, and Matt Grimes has been a brilliant playmaker at this level for a long time. But I just think they've got to fine-tune that balance a little bit to make sure they've got some solidity about them when the ball gets turned over.
Would you agree with that, Johnny, in terms of a team that could maybe get dragged into it?
Yeah, they definitely can. I was thinking there when you were talking about Luke Williams, I remember him being at Notts, and you see the same patterns where defensively they're really suspect. So I'm thinking, is it terminal with Luke Williams? Do you think he's not going to adapt his style? It's always going to be his way. I'm not going to move too far away from it, and that might be detriment to Swansea. Well, not staying in the division. I think they will be. I think they'll be fine, but they'll probably keep them to a certain ceiling because he won't adapt it even more.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think there's one component of it, which is if you've got better defenders who are quick and strong and love defending transitional attacks, that obviously makes it easier to play the style that you want to play. At the same time, I think that with Luke Williams, he's very stubborn about his way of playing, which can make him a good fit for Swansea because it's a club that demands that style of football. So in that sense, the fit can be good. But I'm also there's part of me that's a little bit apprehensive about his sides defensively and how easily they can get carved open.
Brilliant stuff, Gab. And your Championship treble, please, for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going with Sheffield United to win this weekend. I've gone with Leeds, and I think Sheffield Wednesday will beat Luton Town because of that work Danny Rowles does. I like. I think he's a brilliant coach. I think he coaches some really clear patterns of play, and they've got a really clear sort of in-possession shape about them whilst being responsible without the ball. So yeah, I like Sheffield Wednesday. I think they're a very good top half side. I think they're going to beat Luton this weekend.
Sheffield United to bounce back then from their big defeat at home to Hull.
Yeah, I think certainly going to be a busy end to the window for them. You get the feeling they've added up top, haven't they, with Ben Brereton Diaz and Tom Cannon coming in, so that's certainly going to help them. I think they certainly need better squad depth, so they're going to need another 3 or 4 coming in the next week or so. But a little bit worry for me has been Chris Wilder had kind of talked up a lot of the recent games where they won at Watford with players who weren't supposed to play 90 minutes really battling through, and you kind of admire the spirit that he's cultivated in one sense, but you also wonder about the danger of kind of dramatising things so much in January and actually feeling like every game is a cup final when really you want that to be in April, do you sometimes?
Yeah, you do. It was also a very Chris Wilder post-match press conference as well. You know, it's never about his Sheffield United team. It's always like the other team at X, Y and Z. They've spent more. They've all done this and this, which I know he loves to deflect. Obviously, I've seen it at Middlesbrough. It's just very Chris Wilder. But I think they're a cause for concern as well, Sheffield United. There could be, this results here and there. They've signed quite a few Stoke players, so are they going to become Stoke? They're like where they just don't pick up points, so who knows?
Who knows? We'll finish with our fun little question as well. And the question for you both this week is: you're a chairman in need of cash on January transfer deadline day, but your team is in contention for promotion to the Premier League. You get a call to sign your best player for 20 million. I'll say 20 million. What do you do?
I would sell.
I think
because I think I believe in running clubs sustainably, and a massive part of that in the modern era is actually cashing in on your big assets and then backing your recruitment process to replace them. So I think for that sort of money, I would sell.
I think there's only a couple of players in the Championship right now, basically Chris Rigg and maybe one other. You would maybe Bellingham. We don't know. That are worth more than 20 million. I think for any Championship club, 20 million is the figure for me where I think you've probably got to say yes.
You do. I think this is quite on brand for Middlesbrough really, because in the summer we were very close to selling Latte Lath to Ipswich for a very similar fee, about £20 million, and we didn't do it. The reason why we didn't do it is that we just didn't have time to bring someone else in. I completely echo your thoughts. Middlesbrough are the same now, where sometimes you have to sell to really reinvest it, but there's got to be a time where you've got to stick or twist, and I think you don't. I just don't think you do sell. I think you keep a player there unless he's desperately want to go. Could be Morgan Whittaker.
The January one's really tricky, isn't it? Because if you are in the promotion hunt and you've got some momentum, selling your best player, even if sometimes you get them back on loan, can take the momentum out and then put a bit of doubt amongst some of the other squad members as well. So two sides of the story, but you'd sell and you'd keep. Is that where we're ending it?
Yeah, I'd keep it unless you have something really lined up where you can reinvest that cash with two or three players to fill the gap.
Well, I think what you want to do, Johnny, is have a basically a conveyor belt where you've got you succession plan really well, and you bring in the next guy before you've sold that one. So and so that you can sell at any point and cash in, and you've got somebody else coming up.
It's contextual, isn't it? I think it's contextual for where you are, and I think Finners is a prime example of this. It took him about 3 or 4 months to get up to speed, even though he only cost us just under £2 million bargain this season, bargain by the way. But I think that with new players coming in, if you are pushing for promotion in that moment, you are are you waving a white flag and trying to look for long-term success because it might come round again? We sold Morgan Rogers, we brought in Finners, and it took Finners a few months to get used to the system. So yeah, I agree on the conveyor belt. Middlesbrough are doing that right now, but it's just those, if you're gonna do it and you're so close, and you can kind of go, well, there's a Premier League move for you here, you could just do it and we'll sell you in the summer. I think that's probably the way to go.
I think the summer thing is a big deal. If you they're not going to lose value and you can do it in summer, that does make sense. Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I've really enjoyed chatting Boro with you, Johnny. Thanks for joining us. Gab, as always, thanks for coming on. We'll see you all next week. Make sure you like and subscribe. Get your thoughts in the comments below. But that is it from us on The Sportsman Untitled.